Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. So we all know Goats Comp, right? Some of us may even know what Goats Comp is. But what about mountain goats? Floats, moats, coats, Anna goats, Moira goats, Zen goats. All of these are genuine strategies and compositions that are used in the pro scene. Granted, it kind of takes the mickey a little bit with some of the names. But today I wanted to go over all of the different variations of this composition and exactly why it gets used. Some of this info coming from Jane himself, the pro scene, and also the Angry Cup, which was the EU Tier 2 tournament that I casted last week. I see this a lot in the games that I'm in, which is High Diamond Low Master, of people going, oh let's go Goats Comp, and they're not really sure what the hell they're doing. They just go free tanks, no matter what tanks there are, and any supports. And it doesn't quite work out, so this is a nice, quick, concise breakdown of not only Goats Comp, but all of the derivatives. Before we look at Goats Comp, we need to have a look at the meta as a whole. One of the biggest misconceptions that you will hear is that the meta is very one-dimensional. It used to be pretty bad, sure, but now we've seen players diverse and pick certain counters to Goats Comp, and that's what we're going to go over now, just before we get into the nitty-gritty of different variations of Goats. To be very clear, the de facto style of Goats Comp is Reinhardt, Zarya, D.Va, Brigitte, Lucio, Moira. Goats' win condition is to effectively be a really heavy composition and run for objectives and just be really difficult to kill. It's kinda like the big overweight school bully, right? There's not an awful lot of finesse, but pound for pound they're going to take you down, just because they're a lot heavier. And the reason why Moira's ran here is that she is the least susceptible to being dove on. She has a really good solid healing output, she can, fade out of a Doomfist or Sombra coming after her, and she can somewhat look after herself a little bit more than Anna or Zenyatta. But saying that, Dive still, to an extent, does counter Goats, but a very specific type. It's not the Winston, D.Va, Genji, Tracer days anymore because of the Brigitte. But Doomfist and Sombra, they get used a lot because they have a good amount of CC themselves, being able to hack, stun targets, or just instantly kill them. Not only that, you have EMP, which is a great ultimate for team wiping teams that like to play close together compositions, right? You don't need to worry about trying to hit all 6 enemy players with an EMP because you know that they're going to be somewhat compact. On screen is an example from the Angry Cup. Samsung Morningstars are on the defense, and they're expecting Angry Titans to come out on Goats Comp. So they go Doomfist, Sombra to try and shut it down, use little bits of the high ground for example, but that's what they expect. We'll get back onto this in a second. So this is deemed as somewhat of a counter to Goats, and I use counter in inverted commas because some of the time the Goats is so good that you can play around it, and some of the teams just running this Sombra Doomfist don't really know how to go about it doesn't work. It's also worth adding that this very much is the highest tiers of Overwatch. You're not going to be talking about this in like Diamond or below, I believe, maybe in Masters and below, but I do feel it's interesting to talk about the meta and the compositions used in it. This is more of a for fun thing as opposed to take this information and use it yourself. But I do find it really interesting and I hope you do too. So we have those two compositions, right? We have Goats, and then a counter to it somewhat is the Doomfist Sombra Dive Comp. And then a composition that I hear being used against Sombra Doomfist is McCree Brigitte as the DPS, which I want to just describe as anti-dive for now. Both Brigitte and McCree want to fight up close, and they both have a huge amount of CC available to them, so it comes as no surprise that they are strong against dive. It just makes it really awkward for the Sombra and the Doomfist to get in close without being stunned and instantly killed. And that's exactly what happens in the Angry Cup. Angry Titans come out of spawn on stuff like Wrecking Ball and Farah to scout out what Samsung Morningstars are running. They see that they're running this Sombra Doomfist dive comp and then change to this anti-dive composition, and you can see exactly how it works on screen. But the issue with this comp is that it's weak against Goats. You have this rock paper scissors thing going on with Goats being countered by dive, dive being countered by anti-dive, and anti-dive being countered by Goats. And again, it happens in this Route 66 game. Samsung Morningstars know that they got countered, so when they all team wiped, they went back to spawn, changed up to Goats, because Goats counters this anti-dive that Angry Titans were running. But one thing that I've seen people like Custer and Jane mention is that you also have this rock, paper, scissors going on within Goats Comp. The interaction between Dive and Goats is a bit of an iffy one, and the reason for that is that Goats has different styles of play that you can have depending on what support you run in them. And depending on what support you run, depends on how strong Dive can be in that given situation. There are 3 main styles of Goats Comp, and each of them, again, somewhat rock, paper, scissors one another and counter each other. So we have Moira Goats, as we've gone over, really good against Dive Comp, but is really weak to the other styles of Goats comp, the first being Ana. Ana is really good against Moira Goats comp because you have so much more utility. Moira Goats has a lot of healing and a lot of survivability, but if Ana could get some good grenades in there, also with a sleep, she could do quite a lot. Not only that, Nano Boost is objectively a much stronger ability than Coalescence. Nano Boosting a Reinhardt to help him get his ultimate, Nano Boosting a Zarya to do a lot of damage if she's high on charge, or to help her get her ultimate, are really good examples of just being able to out DPS Moira's healing output, or just to completely shut it down with a good grenade. Effectively, you get more utility out of Ana than you would do with Moira. And then you have Zenyatta Goats, which is really good against Ana Goats, because you could do more damage than Ana can effectively heal. And not only that, if you're running Zenyatta, you have Transcendence, which is another huge support ultimate that can be used against stuff like Graviton, and Earth Shatter if he misses, those kind of areas. So you have Moira Goats being somewhat countered by Ana Goats, that is being somewhat countered by Zen Goats, and then Zen Goats is really susceptible to Sombra Doomfist. The ability to dive onto the Zenyatta to alienate him, instantly kill him with a Doomfist, or just define him as a target with an EMP, takes off the majority of Zenyatta's health, and then the Sombra only needs to sneeze at him to take him down. So that's what I mean about the whole interaction between Doomfist, Sombra, Dive versus Goats. It depends on which Goats that you're running. Moira Goats is pretty strong against Dive, not great but the best out of the options. Ana Goats is weaker, Zen Goats is weakest. So now that you have that diagram on screen showing you exactly how it works, this is where it gets really interesting because teams have been trying out a different strategy that almost amasses different styles of this play. And people are calling it moats, or floats, or coats. They have different names, but they're the same style, and it's becoming very meta. This composition boils down to Winston being played over Reinhardt, which sounds a bit weird. It's almost like the Reinhardt is reliant on being played. But there's a lot of reasons why. Winston gets less screwed by stuff like CC, like the Sombra or the Doomfist. And Winston could also take bits of high ground, dive targets, put his bubble down to isolate enemies, and also when you're paired up with a Zarya, she could get a huge amount of charge from you if you're diving into the backline as a Winston. There are a lot of teams that are running it fairly badly, mind, but that's because players are still getting used to it. It's a very big change, but it does alleviate some of the weaknesses that a Goats comp had, especially a Reinhardt that just would get screwed over constantly. So playing Winston here alleviates a little bit of that stress of just being thrown around and not being in control, but there's still plenty of ways to play it wrong. You also have Goats comp, which is a bit of more of a novelty more than anything. This is more played with a Winston, D.Va and a Wrecking Ball instead of a Zarya. And honestly, you don't see it an awful lot, just because Wrecking Ball isn't in the best spot right now, and this Moats, Floats, Mountain Goats comp just seems to be much better in that situation, because you can dive on high ground and take areas with D.Va and Winston that you couldn't do with a Reinhardt, for example. And I guess this has been put into place to be the bridge in between Goats and the Sombra Doomfist composition that counters them. Not to mention that Doomfist might be getting some nerfs, which makes this counter less strong. So that's one area that I really want to highlight. Maybe give you a new perspective on the Doomfist changes. A lot of people are saying that he doesn't deserve them, which I disagree with. He is a very strong hero. But again, Doomfist is almost becoming the necessary evil that people were saying about Brigitte. Because if Doomfist goes away, then Goats comp becomes more prominent and the counters available become almost non-existent. I love talking about compositions and stuff like this. This is why I like to cast Overwatch and do colour casting, because I like the analytical side of what teams are playing. But this is just a brief breakdown into what the meta's looking like at the moment. It's not just run Goats forehead, there are different styles that counter one another too, but you have this big picture on what the compositions that are being used at the highest tier. And as I said, if you're in gold, you're not going to use any of this information, but it's still quite fun to talk about, right? I'm proper nerding out over this stuff, so hopefully you've humoured me and watched to the end of this video. Thank you very much if you did, but do let us know what you think of the meta. What would you like to see more of? Hell, even stuff like Mei or Symmetra could make an impression in this meta. Also, Pharah too has been played quite a lot, so we'll see. Maybe Hero 30 will change everything. Who knows at this point? But thanks for watching, take care, we'll see you next time.